I never thought my own family would sabotage my wedding, but they did. Not in some small, careless way, like forgetting to RSVP or causing mild drama at the reception. No, my younger brother Travis went out of his way to make sure my wedding day was overshadowed. And my parents? They sided with him. It started a week before the wedding. I was going over last-minute details when my cousin sent me a screenshot. Hey, have you seen this? At first, I didn't get why she was texting me about some random invitation. Then I looked closer. The date. The name on it. Travis was throwing a huge party the night before my wedding. Not just some casual get-together, either. He'd rented out an entire venue, hired a live band, booked a stand-up comedian. It was a full-scale event. I just stared at the screen for a solid minute, like my brain needed time to process just how blatantly petty this was. Then I called my parents. Mom picked up. "Oh, Alex, how's everything going? Did you know about Travis's party?" I asked, skipping any pleasantries. Silence. Then, way too carefully, she said, "Well, yes, he did mention it." I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. "And you didn't think that was, I don't know, a problem?" Mom sighed like I was the one being difficult. "Alex, you didn't invite your brother to the wedding. What did you expect?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. "So you think this is my fault?" "You could have included him," she said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. "You two are brothers. Family should come first." I gritted my teeth. "Mom, Travis and I barely talk. He hates me. Why would I invite someone who goes out of his way to make my life miserable?" "You always exaggerate things," she said dismissively. "Besides, if you hadn't excluded him, none of this would have happened." Dad chimed in then, his voice gruff. "You're acting like a damn child, Alex. He's allowed to throw a party. You don't own the weekend." I stared at the wall. I shouldn't have been surprised. I knew they'd always favored Travis. Knew they let him get away with anything while I had to be the responsible one. But still this? "Are you even coming to the wedding?" My voice was quieter now. Another pause. "We haven't decided yet," Mom finally said. "Travis's party is important too, Alex. You can't expect us to choose." And that right there, that was the moment something inside me just cracked. I was done. "I see," I said, and I hung up. ####. The night before the wedding, I kept checking my phone. I told myself I didn't care, that it didn't matter. But some stupid, deep-rooted part of me still hoped. Maybe they'd text. Maybe they'd call. Maybe they'd realize how messed up this all was. They didn't. Instead, I saw photos. My parents, at Travis's party, laughing and drinking like it was the highlight of their year. Surrounded by relatives I hadn't even known were invited. Meanwhile, I was across the state, trying to enjoy my last night as a bachelor, pretending my parents' absence didn't feel like a gaping hole in the middle of everything. The next morning, I sent a car to pick them up. The driver called me, confused. Said he knocked multiple times. Said no one answered. And I knew then. They weren't coming. For a moment, I felt numb. Then I looked over and saw Lauren, standing there in her dress, looking at me like I was the most important person in the world. And suddenly, none of it mattered. I married her. Without them. And I was happy. For a few hours, at least. Then my phone rang. I ignored the call. Let it go to voicemail. But they kept calling. Over and over. Different numbers, blocked numbers, like they thought if they just annoyed me enough, I'd cave. Lauren glanced over from where she was kicking off her heels, exhaustion written all over her face. "Your parents?" "Probably." I tossed the phone onto the hotel nightstand. "I'm not dealing with it tonight." She nodded. "Good. I should have turned it off. Should have let it sit there and rot. But part of me, some deep, damaged part still desperate for their approval, wanted to know what excuse they were going to pull this time. So later, when Lauren was asleep, I caved. I pressed play. My mother's voice filled the room, sharp and angry. "Well, I hope you're happy, Alex. You got your way." I frowned. "My way?" She kept going. "No one showed up to Travis's party. Not a single person. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for him?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Oh, this was incredible." I braced myself, waiting for the part where she blamed me. I didn't have to wait long. You must have said something, she snapped. You turned everyone against him. I ran a hand down my face. Unbelievable. Another voicemail came through, this time from my dad. His voice was furious. You think this is funny? Your brother spent his damn savings on that party. He went all out. And for what? You ruined it. You ruined everything. I shook my head, half in disbelief, half in amusement. I ruined it? Travis had thrown that party out of spite. He wanted to make my wedding feel small, insignificant. And now that it had blown up in his face, they were scrambling for someone to blame. And of course, that someone was me. The next message was from Travis himself. You smug little piece of shit, he spat. His voice was hoarse, like he'd been drinking. You think you're better than me? You think this makes you win? I sighed and deleted all of them. Lauren stirred beside me. You okay? Yeah, I muttered. They're just being themselves. She rolled over, eyes half open, studying me. And how does that make you feel? I hesitated. For years, their approval had been everything. I had bent over backward to be the good son, the responsible one, the one who did everything right. And now? Now I felt tired, I admitted. She reached for my hand, lacing her fingers through mine. Then stop answering. And that hit me harder than anything my parents had said, because she was right. I didn't have to answer. I didn't owe them anything. I married the love of my life today, and I wasn't going to let them ruin it. For a few days, it was quiet. Too quiet. No calls. No emails. No weird, guilt-trippy Facebook posts from my mom. It was almost unsettling, like the eye of a storm. Lauren and I were finally settling into some real peace. We spent a few extra days at the resort, away from all the bullshit, just existing together. No wedding stress. No family drama. Just us. And then, just as I started to think maybe they'd actually given up, the storm hit. It was 4 a.m. when the doorbell rang. Lauren and I jolted awake at the same time. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. No one would be at our house at this hour, right? Then the pounding started. Loud. Insistent. Lauren shot me a look, still half asleep. Tell me that's not. I swung my legs out of bed and peeked through the blinds. It was them. Travis. My parents. Standing on my front porch, looking pissed off and completely unhinged. Lauren sat up. You've got to be kidding me. I wish I was. They hadn't called. Hadn't warned me. They'd just shown up, like psychos, banging on my door in the middle of the night. I grabbed my phone. I'm calling the cops. Lauren hesitated. Are you sure? I looked at her. They chose this, Lauren. They're the ones standing outside our house at 4 in the damn morning. She exhaled, rubbing her temples. God, they really don't know when to stop. I marched to the door but didn't open it. I wasn't that stupid. Through the peephole, I could see Travis pacing, running a hand through his hair like he was about to explode. Mom stood beside him, arms crossed, and Dad just looked angry. Not hurt, not confused, just angry. Alex, Mom shouted. Open the door. No, I said flatly. Silence. Then more pounding. Come on, man, Travis snapped. Just talk to us. Talk about what? I asked through the door. How this is completely insane. How normal people don't show up at someone's house in the middle of the night. You left us no choice. Mom yelled. I almost laughed. No choice? You're joking, right? I said. You had a choice the day of my wedding. You had a choice when you picked Travis's party over me. You had a choice every single time you ignored my calls. Travis scoffed. Oh, get over yourself. I clenched my jaw. Get off my property. Mom's voice softened, like she thought she could flip a switch and suddenly play the concerned parent. Alex, sweetie. No. I cut her off. I'm done, Mom. You don't get to pull this. Not anymore. Dad spoke up then, voice cold. You really think you're better than us now, huh? That got me. I let out a slow breath and finally opened the door. Just a crack. I don't think I'm better than you, I said quietly. I just think I'm finally free of you. Travis's face twisted. You think this is over, he said, voice low. Something about the way he said it, like a threat, like a promise, sent a chill down my spine. I met his eyes. Yeah, I do. And then I shut the door in their faces. Lauren had her phone in her hand, ready to call the cops if I gave her the signal, but we didn't need to. A second later, my parents turned and left. I exhaled, pressing my forehead against the door. Lauren's voice was quiet. What now? I straightened up. Now, I said. Now, I make it permanent. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Lauren sat across from me at the kitchen table, watching as I explained everything over the phone. The party, the calls, the 4 a.m. ambush. I could tell she was trying not to let her emotions show, but I knew her too well. She was pissed. When I hung up, she finally spoke. What did they say? I sighed, rubbing a hand down my face. They think I have more than enough for a restraining order, especially after last night. Her shoulders sagged with relief. Good. I nodded, but I didn't feel good. I felt off, like I was about to cross some invisible line I could never uncross. Which was stupid, right? My own family had forced my hand. They'd chosen this path. So why did I still feel like the bad guy? Lauren must have seen something on my face because she reached for my hand. You're not wrong for doing this, Alex. They didn't leave you a choice. I swallowed, nodding. I know. But some part of me, the part that spent years trying to be the perfect son, the responsible one, the one who kept the family together, still struggled with it. By the afternoon, I had everything gathered. Call logs, emails, texts, even a few recordings of their voicemails, the ones where they raged about how I'd ruined Travis's life. It was all so painfully pathetic when I laid it out like that. That night, as I was organizing the last of the evidence, Lauren's phone rang. She frowned. Unknown number. My stomach twisted. Don't answer. She hesitated, then answered anyway, putting it on speaker. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then, a voice. Lauren. It was Travis. Her expression hardened. What do you want? Tell Alex to call me. Lauren snorted. Yeah, that's not happening. A sharp exhale. He hesitated, and for a second, I thought maybe he was actually about to apologize. But then he said, he owes me that much. Lauren's jaw clenched. Are you serious right now? Travis's voice sharpened. You don't get it, Lauren. No, she cut in. You don't get it. You did this. You and your parents. You chose to be selfish. You chose to be petty. And now you're suffering the consequences. Silence. Then, quieter, colder, Travis muttered, This isn't over. That was it. No yelling. No ranting. Just a simple, unsettling promise. Lauren hung up, gripping the phone so tight her knuckles went white. I took it from her gently, setting it down. She exhaled sharply. Restraining order. Now. I nodded. And for the first time, I didn't hesitate. A week later, I stood in a courtroom, waiting for the judge to make it official. I never thought it would come to this, filing for a restraining order against my own family. But after everything, after the calls, the ambush, and Travis's little, this isn't over stunt, it was the only option left. Lauren was next to me, her fingers laced tightly through mine. I could feel the tension in her grip, but she didn't say anything, just stood with me, solid as ever. A few rows away, my parents sat stiffly, whispering furiously to each other. Travis, on the other hand, looked like he hadn't slept in days. When my mother caught my eye, she gave me this look, part disbelief, part anger, like I was the one betraying them, like I was the problem. I looked away. The hearing itself was straightforward. I had proof. They had excuses. Travis tried to play it off like it was nothing. I was just trying to talk to my brother, he said, shaking his head like I was overreacting. Is that really a crime now? The judge didn't look impressed. You showed up at his house at 4 a.m, yelling and banging on his door. Travis clenched his jaw. I wasn't thinking straight. That much is clear, the judge said dryly. Mom jumped in next, as expected. This is a family matter, she insisted. It doesn't belong in a courtroom. The judge barely even glanced at her. Ma'am, your family matter resulted in repeated harassment. Your son has made it clear he does not want contact. That needs to be respected. Mom opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, but shut it just as quickly. A few minutes later, it was over. The judge ruled in my favor. A 2-year restraining order. No contact. No phone calls. No showing up at my house. If they so much as tried, they'd be arrested. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt exhausted. Outside the courthouse, my parents caught up to me one last time. Dad was furious. You really did it, huh? I stared at him, unblinking. Yeah, I did. Mom's voice cracked. Alex, we're still your parents. I took a slow breath. And that used to mean something, I said. Maybe it still does. But not enough. She flinched. Dad scoffed. You're making a mistake. I tilted my head. No, I'm finally making the right choice. And then I walked away. That night, Lauren and I sat out on our balcony, watching the city lights. For the first time in weeks, my phone was silent. No calls. No messages. No threats. Just peace. Lauren leaned her head on my shoulder. How do you feel? I thought about it. Then, for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Free.